Welcome to the Career Coffee Chat podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Urban, certified career strategist and executive coach, removing career roadblocks so you can achieve more impact, influence, and income. Welcome to Career Coffee Chat Live. I'm your host, Aaron Urban. I'm very excited today to chat with you how you can achieve more without adding more stress. Sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? I was always under the impression that being a high performer equaled more stress in your life. But overachievers like myself, we're really good at adding more on our plates. So according to our guest on today's show, however, you can be a high performer without adding extra stress in your work life. So I don't know about you, but that sounds really exciting. So come on in and join us to find out what international business and leadership coach Maggie Perotin has to say about how to avoid burnout and leveraging the very same skills you already have as a high achiever to achieve more with less stress. Now let's dive in so we can discuss how to uncover the common misconceptions about high performance. Just like I did, I thought high achievers meant more stress, right? Apparently that's not the case. And we'll learn how high achieving habits can actually help or prevent burnout, or help avoid or prevent burnout. We'll also discuss how high performance lifestyles can help you feel happier, be healthier, and at the same time more successful in your professional career. So I'm really excited to welcome our guest today. Maggie is a host of the Diamond Effect podcast. She gives service-based professionals and entrepreneurs clarity and tools to exceed their goals while transforming into high-performing CEOs of their businesses. So without further ado, please say hi to Maggie.
Thank you, Aaron, for having me. I'm happy to be here. Hi, everybody.
So Maggie, you've been forewarned. I'm super curious.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about our topic, but I'm really super curious, what was that catalyst for you to get you where you are today? Now, we talked a little bit about the show that you have been a high performer yourself for many years.
Yes.
And a leader in operations, leading teams. You experienced kind of a pivot point in your career, didn't you?
I did. So just like you and probably everybody here, I am very ambitious, and professional sort of part of life is very important to me, right? And I always want to grow and so on, and high achiever. But my pivot came from burnout. I did burn out in my corporate career. It was about 4 years ago. It was situational in a sense, when it wasn't like systemic problem. It was just a certain position in a certain time of the year that brought sort of that intensity of work and demand. And, I'm not going to get into details here. It's just too long of a story. But there was a moment in that time for me where I felt a little bit trapped, right? Where I was like, I can't go on like this, because otherwise I will end up in a hospital. My health will not be good. And I can't go on like this because mentally I can't manage that anymore. I can't go on like this because I have a young family that I want to spend time with. And I didn't sign up for, that type of stress and pressure. And that led me to actually sign up for some high performance coaching. And even though before I thought of myself as a very organized person, I'm a mom, young woman, going into corporate career, I thought I could handle a lot, but that was at the price of really being stressed and not necessarily always as patient of a mom as I wanted to be with my kids and so on. So when I actually signed up for high performance coaching, I realized how much the good habits and combining your potential that you have and everything you want to achieve, but with intention and good habits can help you be even more effective, right? And through that process also came an idea for my business and wanting to do more of what I love, which is coaching people and helping
Right.
them grow, and marrying also what I love, which is business, and it's fun and so on, and becoming a business coach.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. It's interesting. Most of the people who have become coaches or consultants or struck out on their own, they've experienced some sort of catalyst in their life. I want to say hi. Yeah, Legia. I've mispronounced that terribly. I know. I'm so sorry. But thank you for tuning in from Costa Rica. It is great to see you. Great to have you tune in. And for those of you who are just tuning into the show, say hi, say where you're from, ask your comments. Now, I don't know about you, but I was kind of surprised to hear, hey, being a high performer, you can actually leverage those very same tools that make you great at your work, great at your job, to have less stress. Because I thought it was all about just letting go, like letting go of needing to have things be a certain way, or letting go of that, I don't know, perfectionist, that high bar, because that was me. I set a really high bar for myself, and it was very stressful, right? And, oh, good. She said, that is how it's pronounced. Thank goodness. Thank you. Shoo. See, that's the high performer in me. I have to have it just right. But, it's true. We all think that being that overachiever equals more stress, right? Yeah. So it's really fascinating to learn that that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, no, because you're right. Like, we automatically, and whether it's through what we think, right, or whether how we've been taught by society, we automatically think that higher performance or higher productivity means more time put in and more work. And of course, all of us have 24/7. We got to sleep, we got to eat, we need to relax and rest and so on, mentally and physically. So that's not really the case. Like, high performance is about more value with the time that you work. So producing more value, whether it's in your own business or whether it's in your career. And the way you can do this when you as a human being operate at the highest level. And what creates value, it's our thinking and our brain, right? But we're not at our highest level when we always in thinking, in creating new ideas, in making things more efficient, when we're exhausted because we're stressed, when we're tired, right? Anybody who is a parent or has ever been tired, how you function next day. It's not your best, right? Everything takes you longer. You can't really think straight sometimes, right? When you're truly exhausted and so on. So high performance is about taking care of yourself first, creating a balance in the way you rest, you sleep. I know, right? Like, how is that even possible? In the way you even nourish yourself. So then when it comes to work, you can be super effective with the time. And yes, there's some planning and some intention to it as to what things you focus on, and some prioritization boundaries as well. But when you are actually in work, you produce the most value within the time that you want to spend. And that's that misconception, right? That high performance, actually, the better you function as a human, the more high performing you are. And that's why high performing CEOs and so on are able to achieve so much by working, let's say, 6 hours a day. Because the quality of work that they put, the quality of idea surpasses anybody else who is exhausted, who just is that in.
Oh, yeah.
Our brain, when we're exhausted, we're either in flight and fight mode, right? When we're just focusing on how can I survive, our brain does not think creatively at that point, right? Or it's just, okay, how can I do the minimum so I can get through the day? And that's not how value is produced.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's so interesting. So really, what we're focusing on here is leveraging the ability of most high achievers and high performers. We can be very intentional. We can have the focus. Yeah. We're probably fairly decent at organizing our, leading into a structure.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's when we start to what I call spin.
Mm-hmm.
So you start getting in the spin cycle, and
Yeah.
some of you may know what that sounds like or feels like, right? What does that mean to you? So let me know if that resonates with you at all. That spin cycle where you're really not productive, you're just all in your head. It's just so much. You're not prioritizing. You're not putting out the right actions for the right results.
Yeah.
You're just flailing about and hoping something will happen. Well, yeah, no, you're definitely not able to be a high performer in that state. So focusing on self first, which a lot of people struggle there. A lot of people struggle to focus on self and not understanding that you can't give what you don't have.
Yeah, you can, right? We can give from an empty cup, and you're right. A lot of people struggle with that because we are, again, either we were raised or we think that, oh, it's selfish, that we need to give first and we need to, we need to take care of others and so on. Right. But it's like on the plane, right? Like you need to put the air mask on yourself first to be able to breathe and then help others rather than collapse and help nobody.
Right, then you're not good to anyone at all.
Right. So it's the same when you establish or you introduce certain good habits, or I call them high performance habits in your life, then when you're less stressed, you can be more productive within the time you have. You have greater ideas. You handle things better. They don't get to you. So again, you don't get into that spin cycle. Oh my God, what's going on? And so on. You're able to handle emergencies or whatever comes our way better, right? And then when you have also certain boundaries, it's also helping you feel better. And when you feel better, you function better. Everything around you functions better.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's really interesting because when you think about high performance, sometimes we connect that with doing more. And what's counterintuitive is it actually, in order to tap into our peak performance, or what I call your zone of genius. So that's that place where you operate at, you're most fulfilled, you're able to leverage your strengths, you're able to show up 100% comfortably, authentically. And you're also aligned with who you are internally, like your core values, what your drivers are, what's your life, mission, vision, all that. In order to do that, though, we do need to sometimes do nothing.
Yes. Yes.
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I call it struggle with that.
I know. Like I call it take time to think. And you're right. Like as high achievers, sometimes we think we need to be in do mode. But when we're in do mode, it's just like operations we're going. And our brain cannot be in operations and the creative strategic time at the same time. It's impossible. We need to create space and time for that strategic creative brain to start thinking, right? It just needs to have that time. So as you say, doing nothing, or really, I call it creating time for you. I said, like, even if you're in a career, if you think of your career, I say you're the CEO of your role and you're the CEO of maybe if you have a small team, right? If you create that time for you to think about, right? Okay, me, what's important? Like if you're a solopreneur, let's just say, or as a human, what's important to me? What do I want, right? Very often we know what we don't want, but we don't know what we want. So what do I want and how am I going to get there, right? Or if I have a team, what's important for my team, right? And how can we together get to wherever we're going? Your brain, you have so much knowledge that you won't be able to tap into unless you create that time and space. Because when we're in the hamster wheel going, we just don't have time. Like it's just impossible for our brain to switch, right? And that's where the great ideas come. And that time has to be created, that proactive time, because if you just let it to, I will do it when I have time, you'll never go, right? Like the time as we are adults, our time just fills itself up, right? Nobody sits around there saying,
we tend to fill it up, I'd have to say. We're pretty good at filling up our time.
Yeah. It's just, But I have kids, and the kids sometimes say, "Mommy, I'm bored. I don't know what to do." But that just happens to the kids, right? And I always have ideas for them what they can do.
Right.
But like the moment we become adults, it just doesn't happen, right? Time fills itself. So we have to be very intentional about how we spend and invest that time in order to, function at best, or like really reach our full potential. And by full potential, I mean, just as you said, like feeling fulfilled, feeling happy, not stressed and overwhelmed, balanced, and doing our best work at the same time.
Right. Yeah. And you're absolutely on point. I call it the power pause, because most people are like, oh, well, I don't have a whole bunch of time to pause and reflect. Like, I've got to do this, I have the long to-do list, right? And that's where we're focusing our intent on.
Yeah.
Instead of focusing our intent on, okay, how can I create balance? Or part of it is, well, yes, you have so many hours in the week. And I would have to argue most of us during a week can probably complete all of our needed tasks and to-dos and all these things that we have to do in that given week, in the week. But what we tell ourselves is, I don't have enough time.
Yeah.
And when that comes out of your mouth, those are instructions for the brain to see that you don't have any time. So then even if you did, you wouldn't see it, because your brain's like, oh, that's the instructions. I don't have enough time. So therefore, we just don't.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, you're right. Like, the way we think, it ultimately creates that result, right? Because like the way, oh, I don't have enough time, then we feel like we don't. And then we are not looking. Like, I actually, through the high performance, I often believe that you can create time on demand. Like, if you're super intentional about what's important and ditch a bunch of stuff that keeps you busy that you're not even realizing, even spinning in, I don't have time, how much time is that taking? If you really were tracking it, right? Like, that can be a very interesting thing. Like, one of the things I ask my clients always is to, and I'm going to throw it out there for those who want it, just track what you do for a week from the moment you get up to the moment you go to bed. That exercise alone will give you so much awareness into how much time you actually have, and maybe you're spending them on things that don't bring any value, don't add
like
any
this.
Value. Yes,
I don't have any time.
Like this.
I don't have any time.
Yes. Or even thinking about that, like, there hasn't been a client of mine who hasn't had aha moments by just doing that exercise, right? And then you realize, oh my God, I actually have more time than I thought. Now, what am I going to do with it? Because that's a whole different story as well, right?
Right. And with the leaders I coach, oftentimes I'll hear, well, I'm in meetings. Right? The incessant meeting issue. Okay. Do you need to be in be in all of those meetings? Are you adding value every single moment of those meetings? Well, no, actually. So I really do propose, like, if I get the opportunity from time to time, I can go in and actually affect culture changes. And one of the things that we done in the past is bring people in. Now that we have technology, we have instant messaging. So if you have a staff meeting, let's just say you've got 30 people in this meeting, chances are a lot of those people will be sitting around going, trying to do something else while they're kind of listening, right?
Yeah.
So not really present anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if this group needs attention from 10 to 10:15, then tell them, you need to be here from 10 to 10:15. And then 10:15, the second group comes in, right? So do we even really need to be in the entire meeting? Chances are, no, you don't. Right.
Yeah, and you're right. Like, and that was, for example, that establishing those boundaries. So one of the things that when I go out of my high performance coaching that I took and then started implementing some of them in my corporate career at the time, that was it. Like, I was being triple booked for 3 meetings at the same time, right? And that can cause stress, right? Because like, oh my God, like which one do I go? I started being ruthless with the meetings that I attended, that I accepted, that, just at first, like sometimes we just take those things on thinking that we can't say no. And like simple, just asking, do you need me? Like, why am I even here? There's no agenda. Like, what's important? And limiting the amount of meetings I attended to really the core ones that created the time for me that I then utilize to do the work, to lead my team and do other things, right? Because yeah, you're right. Like in corporate world, you could spend sometimes days in meetings. Half of them, you don't contribute, you don't take anything out of them. And at the same time, you can't really do much other than maybe check an email, which is again, not, multitasking is way overrated. It doesn't produce much. So yeah, meetings are definitely time stealer, but there's a lot in your power that you can do to, set some boundaries around it.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from those of you who are either tuning in now or later, if you're listening to a replay or the podcast. Hey, what is a big time suck? We've heard that term before. What's really taking your time? When do you feel your time is going? Is that checking, emails? Is that the meetings, the incessant meetings? What is really dragging you out of your zone during the day? It's not allowing you to be value add in that creative space where you can truly feel like you are being productive during your day or your week. It's very interesting because at one point I was like, okay, I can't have more than 280 emails in my inbox at one time. I just have to be able to clean them up. I have a 480 at the current time, and I don't care.
Yeah.
Because I've got a system. These are the ones that I focus on. The rest of them they just go. I don't need to clean them up.
Yeah.
I've got several terabytes of storage.
Yeah. And as you say, like some of that high performance is really the ability to let go of things that don't matter, right? And let go of certain expectations that we sometimes put on ourselves. It's not even the expectations of other people. We think it is because that's what our mind is telling us, but truly it's not, right? So realizing also like what's important, what's not, and letting go and not getting like the littlest stuff get to us.
Right.
That's a huge stress reductor as well. And that pressure that it's not necessary and keeps us from, again, doing our best work and thinking at the highest level when we think about, oh my God, I have this goal that really doesn't matter how many emails I have in my inbox, as long as I have a system to manage them and prioritize things, right?
Right. Yeah. Unless you have somebody who can go through them and weed them out for you, does it really matter?
Yeah.
I actually talked to a friend who's a podcaster, and he's like, gosh, I just spend like so many hours going through my email. It's just so stressful. It's like, Neil, we need to have a conversation. Do you need to clean them out? I mean, is this a moral imperative, or is it what metric are you performing to here? So are you actually able to show up as you need to in other spaces? Probably not. So I'd love to hear from you, Maggie. What do you think about managing your calendar?
Managing the calendar. So I actually use and teach my clients to plan weekly. So I am not a fan of never-ending to-do lists or even going just planning on day to day, because I actually recorded a podcast at some point about never-ending to-do list, but like never-ending to-do list, it's just the list of things. Usually there's no prioritization there. That just keeps growing. And again, it keeps weighing on our brain because those are all unclosed loops in our mind. Those are commitments that we kind of made for ourselves, and our mind keeps thinking, oh, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do that. And if there is something there that's been there for 3 months and you haven't done it and the world hasn't ended, you probably could just like scratch it out. Yeah. But it takes time. Think about it this way. our cognitive energy is limited every day, right? Like we're like a battery, we drain throughout the day, and that's why we're tired, right? At the end.
Right.
So every decision you make drains that energy. So if you are using your cognitive energy to decide every day from the to-do list, going through back and forth, let's say 10 times what you're going to do, there's so much time you're spending just doing that, and so much you're like really, how would you say, precious energy. So if you actually spend 30 to 45 minutes once a week, whether it's Friday afternoon, whether it's Saturday, whatever, it doesn't matter what day, to plan your week, but plan based on the priorities that you have. So you have to be intentional. Like, what are my priorities? I get my clients to pick 3 overarching goals that will get you to, let's say, in business, I ask my clients to set a money goal, right? It might be different if you're in a corporate and you are not into more financial. It could be very different. But if you have 3, what are the actions that you will do that week that will align with those 3 goals? Because if something doesn't align, you probably shouldn't be doing it, or maybe delegating, or just dropping, or hiring somebody. And then you book it in your calendar. So I'm big fan of booking time slots for those actions in the calendar, because when you do that, what happens? The decisions are made before you go into the week. When I started doing that, and I started doing that in my corporate world, my stress level went so much lower. I felt so good about starting Monday and actually knowing what I had.
Right.
And it didn't mean that things didn't happen and I had to, react to certain things and change, but I still was so much less stressed when I knew what I was going into.
Right.
So that's one. The second thing is, when you do that, you're able to predict certain things, because that's when you're creating that space for your creative brain, right? So you're like, oh, what about this? What about that? I'm forgetting this and that. And you have time to accommodate and react, as opposed to when you're in the week in your hamster wheel and then you forget about something and that happens, then it's
then you beat yourself up.
It's a fire, right? Like it's a fire, you got to put it out. You can actually prevent a bunch of those fires if you spend that time planning. Third of all is, as you go through the week and unexpected things happen, it's so much easier to rearrange things, because some of it you've already done, the rest you know what's going on, and you can reprioritize it much faster than going back and down the list.
Right.
Like,
And then
oh my God,
your
what did I
brain
do,
to make
what
a
I
choice.
didn't do, and so on.
Yeah.
Right. So that's like the calendar, right? And then being very discerning and having those boundaries to know, okay, if those are my goals and things start coming, what do I say no to? And what do I intentionally say yes to? Not because I think I have to, but like, really, do I want to do it? Is it more important than what I've already scheduled? Because if not, next week, you have time too. You can move certain things. Like I found, again, in my own business, it's different. I get to decide on everything. But even in the corporate world, when I started planning and somebody came to me with a meeting, I want a meeting when I already had scheduled, I was like, okay, how important is that? Can it wait till next week? I have time next week. And you wouldn't believe how often that wasn't a problem, right? But we tell ourselves that, we have to do it now. We have to meet with this person now.
Right. Yeah.
Everything is now. And yet, when we're the one who sets the expectation, 80% of the time, not a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. Most people don't even ask the question. And I would argue to say that most people don't even feel like they own their own calendars.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so interesting, because with my clients, I encourage people to, number one, understand it's your calendar. You own it.
Yes.
And you can block time. And they're like, but then people can't schedule a meeting with me. I was like, yeah. That's the idea. I mean, wow, what a concept. And it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to say, Wow, that's great. I'd love to talk to you about whatever it is. This week is pretty full with
Well, yeah,
commitments. Can we talk about that Tuesday?
yeah, yeah,
Hmm, yeah.
yeah. I know. I know.
And
When you take,
even to a client.
yeah, I know. I know.
People don't feel
That's
like
a
they have
novel
that.
idea.
I know, but people don't feel that they're empowered to do that. And I would love to hear from any of you tuning in now. We have some great folks online right now. Or if you're listening to this replay later or the podcast, do you feel empowered
Mhm,
to ask that question?
mhm, mhm.
And have you? Have you asked that question? Because I wouldn't say most people don't.
Yeah, you're right. And yet, when you think about it, we're all human, right? Clients are human.
Mhm.
Why wouldn't we be able to work together to find time that works for
Right.
both, which is
Right.
not that difficult usually to do, as opposed to putting a strain on one side where
Mhm.
then they can't serve the other side at the best of
Capacity.
capability. Because when we're at our best, we are able to get focused, right? When
Mhm.
think about a client meeting. If you're in a client meeting, but you're already thinking, you barely got into it because you had
Mhm.
another meeting, and then you're thinking, oh my God, I have to do this and this and that. How
Mhm.
much attention are you giving it to the client, right? How much value can you bring when you're not present? As
Mhm.
opposed to when you're meeting with them, when it's a good time to meet and you can be present and fully focused, how much more value you can create, right?
Right.
You could discover a business opportunity that you would have never thought of if your mind was racing, thinking about something else.
Right, right, absolutely. And for those of you who are like, well, this sounds great. My boss pulls me into meetings all the time. Okay, well, let's talk about that because most people don't present their prioritization question to their direct manager.
Mhm, mhm.
I'm happy to meet at whatever time. This is a deadline I'm working on right now.
Yeah,
If you want to push that deadline back, I'll be there,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
right? There's only so much of you.
yeah, yeah,
And if we don't articulate that because of
yeah.
fear, usually it's fear.
Mhm,
Oh, well, what will they say? Or they think I'm not a team player or whatever, right? Whatever story we tell ourselves.
mhm,
And it doesn't mean we have to go, well, I can't do that because I've got something else to do. I mean, it's how you say it. You say, I'm
mhm.
happy to be there working on this deadline.
Yeah,
In order for me to be there, that deadline will need to be pushed back a day or two or whatever, right?
yeah,
Are you okay with that? Oftentimes it's a no. And if your boss says you have to do both, find another job.
yeah, yeah. And on the, as you say, like there is bosses who are just not reasonable, but there are bosses that are equally busy and they are reasonable. It's just they don't keep track of your commitments because they have their commitments to go, right?
Mhm.
So sometimes, like, you know, after being a boss myself in my past corporate life, like I would tell my team always, like, hey, if I'm giving you something and you can't do it, just tell me because I can't keep track. Like when you have 30 people and so on, you just not necessarily can't keep track, especially that there's other people on the team maybe
Right.
pulling them and so on. I'm not the only person, at least in my case, right? And yes, I was trying to be as much intentional about it and mindful about asking my team and so on, but sometimes I would forget. But then at the same time, I would, rely on them to tell me, saying, hey, Maggie, like, okay, well, you want this, but I have this. Like, what do you want me to prioritize? Right. And those
Right.
conversations. So sometimes think about your boss in terms of they're equally busy. They might not think about it. But if you tell them, hey, like I can't do it, as you say, Erin, like what is my priority here? That might kind of bring them to like, oh yeah, I'm so sorry, right? Like do this or do that
Mhm.
or figure it out.
This
And
meeting
if
came
they're
in,
not,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And if they're not willing to do that, then as Erin says, find a new boss.
Time to find somewhere else.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So many more people need to hear this because a lot of what we're sharing isn't necessarily what they would call rocket science. We're not talking deep neuroscience techniques, although a lot of it has a tremendous power and impact. I mean,
Mhm.
you would be so surprised to know how simple the adjustments can be in your
Mhm.
life and in your career that have tremendous impact in
Yeah.
all aspects.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah.
This has
First
been,
of all, like sometimes not telling yourself stories that we think are true that are not true, or we don't even know, right? Like what other things, what other think, or even like sometimes the expectations that we put, there are very often expectations we put on ourselves and not the others. That's what I discovered through my own journey. I was like, yeah, because we're high achievers, because we want to do the best we can, sometimes those expectations we put, right, to our own detriment.
right.
So,
Right. Yeah. One of the things I had to learn, because big surprise, I'm an overachiever too. One of the things I had to learn was to ask about expectations and be very clear about those expectations, because I would add layers of
yes.
expectations and try to perform to this standard. It was my own standard. It had nothing to do with what was really expected.
Mhm.
But be very clear and, paraphrasing, okay, so as I understand, this is the expectation, this is the output. Would, if I had an idea, instead of just assuming, say it, then articulate it with this add value. Is this something else that you would
Mhm.
need? Oftentimes the answer is, oh, no, we don't really. I mean, if you want to, fine, but we don't expect that, right? And then you're like, oh, okay. And then bringing it down a notch to what's actually required for you to show up as an individual contributor or a leader, instead of the pie in the sky expectation oftentimes we put on ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Maggie, this has been really fascinating and very interesting conversation, because basically what I've heard so far is, hey, number one, you have to, make space for yourself, because you can't give what you don't have. If you want to be a high achiever, then in order to show up 100%, we have to have the energy to do that. And in order to do that, being very intentional about creating that time, whether you want to call it self-care, whether you want to call it well-being, power of the pause, whatever that looks like for you is very important. And I'd love for people to know that it doesn't take hours.
No, doesn't have to. I started with 5 minutes a day when I, like not even, that was like a 2 minutes, 5 minutes a day for me. And that made so much impact, the 5 minutes.
I mean, just a few minutes just to make sure. I mean, I encourage people to actually do, 5 minutes, 3 to 4 times a day, mid-morning.
Yeah.
Just, pause at lunch. Don't just eat through.
Yes.
And try to do any,
right? I know.
Yeah, I mean, we do. And then in mid-afternoon, okay, am I still on target? Have I allowed myself to get in the spin cycle? Am I constantly scanning my to-do list? Am I getting distracted? Am I being able to focus, or am I allowing things to pull me out? Right. Or, hey, am I doing something that's not value add? Right. Right. If there's somebody who's better at this or can give me some insight, have I connected with them? Have I gotten the support I need? Just some simple, just bullet point questions. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. Can I just not think about something for 2 minutes?
Listening to music, like going outside, breathing in fresh air if you're in the area. In Canada in winter, sometimes it's difficult to do, but like in the summer, it's not that bad.
It's just fresh.
It can be very fresh. but as you say, like taking those breaks throughout the day, like that's a great start, right?
Yeah. And then understanding, what are the boundaries I need to put not only on my life and work balance, but on myself, because I tend to take on too much, right? What are those boundaries, and how do my priorities play into that based on what I want to accomplish? Because you touched on that earlier in the show. Hey, let's know where we want to go with our profession and with our careers. What does that look like for us? And are we aligning our efforts correctly, or are we over here kind of playing around, just being busy doing things, because that seems to be the expectation. Performance is also busyness, which has nothing to do with it. You can be a high performer and do little to nothing, in fact. I know that's shocking. It's shocking. But then also, understanding how to plan your week instead of, you just reacting
Yeah.
or staring at this endless, because there's always things to do.
Always.
I mean, there are always things to do. My husband tells this to me all the time. He goes, well, but I have more to do. I was like, honey, you will be there tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Tio says he's a strong believer in exercising outdoors after work. Yeah. I encourage, if you can, take a break during the working day, actually, if you can. And again, if you've got meetings in the afternoon, maybe you don't want to come back all like that. But if you can take a short breather just to unplug from the Task Positive Network, because if this is going and this is drained, then your cognitive function will not remain at peak level throughout the day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exercise is great. And, one more tip I guess I'll have is like, think about how you start your day, right? So like starting and, for example, not looking at this, that's great. And if you can, before you start going into meetings or looking at the phone and so on, spend even again, if it's 5 minutes, whatever you're doing, like, whether it's meditation, prayer, whether it's just having a coffee in quiet time and just calming yourself and grounding, that 5 minutes will set you up for will give you like a strong footing to handle whatever comes to you throughout the day so much better. That was really again, one of the things that I implemented, and it allowed me to handle anything that came to me in my corporate career with less stress, more calm, being able to process, things much better, more effectively. So I would just, give that little tip. How can you start your day with a couple of minutes that's quiet, that grounds you and sets you up for success for the day?
Yeah, and there's a very good reason for doing that from a neuroscience perspective. Again, I said I wouldn't go into all the deep neuroscience details, but there is a very good reason, because you're coming off your Task Positive Network, you're lowering your brainwave agitation state, because oftentimes we'll, particularly for high achievers, we've got the long list and we're trying to keep it mentally, which by the way is a big no-no. Always write it down. We talk about not having the long list, but get it off your brain, because trying to keep it here is not healthy or productive. And that sucker will wake you up at 3 a.m. rather. So get it out, but we don't want to enter our day like very agitated brainwave state, because it's just not a state that's productive for us. We're more calm, more centered and balanced. Then we're able to handle life with more grace, if you will, and more creatively too. We're able to access all parts of our brain instead of being really wrapped up. So that's a great tip. Absolutely. And remember, you own your calendar. Yeah. So it's been a real pleasure having you on the show, Maggie.
Yeah. Thank you, Erin, for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Now, how can people reach you?
The best way, if you're on LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn under my name, Maggie Perotin, and stairwaytoleadership.com is my website, and in there you have all kinds of contact information with my social media wherever you are. So stairwaytoleadership.com is probably the best way.
And she's also a host of the Diamond Podcast. It's Diamond Effect Podcast.
Yes, it's Diamond Effect Podcast. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. And she has her clients on there who are also leaders, and they share best practices and tips. So that'd be very interesting as well. Well, Maggie, it's been a great pleasure. And it's also been a lot of fun having you all on the show today live. If you're tuning in now or watching the replay later, just know that if you do have a comment or a question, reach out to us directly or just comment on the live stream replay. I will see it. We'll be notified, because we're here to help you thrive, my friends. So until next time, bye for now and keep elevating.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining. Thank you, Erin, for having me.
Thank you for tuning in on the Career Coffee Chat podcast. It's been a pleasure. Feel free to reach out to me. My email is coacheurban@gmail.com or tweet at coacheurban, Instagram coach.eurban, or reach out to my Facebook group, Elevate Your Career. So I'd love to learn more about you, hear your insights, and what questions you have. You can find out more about me at coacheurban.com. And don't forget, please do reach out on LinkedIn. You can find me at Erin Urban. Until next time, cheers. Here's to caffeinating your career.